Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these embellished beaded Kumihimo cabochon earrings. And these are the ones that I made using these materials here. So in this case I'm using a blue coated hematite cabochon, really beautiful ones, and they look like that. And then I matched them with some mainly black beads, but then some embellishment beads there to add some sparkle as well. The back looks like this, so you can see the cabochon both from the front and the back. And then we have the braid here going all the way around, capturing the cabochon and holding it in place using SuperDuos in the braid. And then I've added this embellishment on the edge to add a nice sparkle. So these are the ones I'm going to show you how to make. So if you want to learn how to do that, then stay tuned. So it's these materials here that I'm going to be using. First of all, here we need our round Kumihimo disc because it's a round braid that we're making. And then to make that braid, I'm using this 0.4mm S-lon cord in black. I'm just choosing black because it's going to go really nicely with the beads that I'm using, just in case any of the cord shows through. And then as for the beads, I'm using these different ones here for different purposes. First of all, I have some 8 Miyuki seed beads, and these are opaque black. And these are going to be the main beads in the braid. Then I have SuperDuos here in jet, so also just in black. They're also going to be part of the braid mainly. And then I have 15 seed beads, opaque black again to make it all match. These are going to be used after we've made the braid to help capture the cabochon, along with these bicones to be the edge, so the embellishment along the edge there. Now these ones are jet AB colour, and because they have that AB, that kind of rainbow effect, but more blue tones, I thought they would go really lovely with the cabochons that I'm using. And they are these 2 by 3 centimeter oval cabochons, and specifically I'm using some blue coated hematite gemstone ones. You can obviously choose whatever you want to. And to capture the cabochons, I'm using this S-lon size D thread in a black colour to make it match, so in case any of the thread shows, it's going to still match with the beads, and along with the beading needle here as well. And the Kumihimo ends I'm going to be using to finish off the ends of the braid, and also attach to the earring findings, and these 8mm ones. And then I'm using some jump rings to attach to the earring findings. I'm just using these earring posts and butterfly backs, but you can obviously attach yours to whatever you prefer. So let's get all the materials together and let's get started. And then we'll need some lengths of our S-lon cord. So what I have here is 4 lengths of about 80 centimeters each. And what I'm then going to do is put all the ends together here, because we need to find the middle of them. And then put the ends together again, just like that. Because then up here I have the midpoint. I just tied a regular knot on that to know where that is, and then I put a piece of scrap wire around that to help pull it down through the disc. So I took that midpoint of the cords with that wire and put it down through the hole in the center of the disc. So that's coming out towards the back there, and that's also where braid is going to be coming out. And then the longer lengths are distributed like this. So I just use the dots there, I'm not using the numbers for reference. And I put 1 cord on either side of each dot there. So we just have pairs opposite each other evenly spread around the disc. So now all the cords have been folded in half, so basically doubled over. So they're turned into 2 working lengths instead of just the 1. And then to start the braid, I'm going to make a small section of braid with just the cord first of all. And what that is I'm going to start with the top left cord and release that from the disc. Bring that down to the bottom. Stay on that left side. And then I'm going to take the bottom right cord and bring that up towards the top of the disc. Again, stay on the right side of that top cord. Now turn your disc to the next pair, so a quarter. Just like this, and then repeat the exact same thing. Take the top left one, bring that down, and then the bottom right one and bring that up, just like that, and continue like this for the next pair, and do this till you have about 1 centimeter of braid. So now I have my braid started there. You can see that little section with just the cords coming out on the back. Then it's time to start adding the beads onto the lengths of cord. So this is then the setup of all the beads on the cords, and I'm just going to go through them now. And as you can see, some of them here only have 8/0 on, and then the rest have 8/0 and SuperDuos on. And on all the ones with the SuperDuos, the general pattern is that you have a SuperDuo 3/8, SuperDuo 3/8, and then the difference between them is just how they start and finish. So if we start with the top left one there, what we start with is 2 8/0, and then it goes into the pattern with the SuperDuos and the 8/0 in between, and in total there's 7 of the SuperDuos, and then it finishes on 2 8/0 as well. And then on the one right next to it, so the top right one, we have 28 8/0. Then moving on to the side of the disc, so the top one on the right side here, we start with 2 8/0, and then we have the pattern where we have 7 SuperDuos and it finishes on 1/8. And then the bottom one of the two starts with 1/8, and then we again have 7 SuperDuos with the 3/8 in between according to the pattern, and then it finishes on 2/8 again. And then for the right one on the bottom side of the disc, we start out with 4/8, and then there's 6 SuperDuos in the pattern, and it also finishes on 4/8. And the left one out of the bottom two, yet again we have 28/8, just as we did up here on the top one. On the left side of the disc on the bottom one here, we start with 4/8, and then we have 6 of the SuperDuos in the pattern, and then it finishes on 3/8. And then the top one out of those two starts with the 3/8, has 6 SuperDuos in the pattern, and then finishes on the 4/8. So this is how we need to add the beads to achieve the pattern in the braid that we need to capture the cabochon. Now the next cord that I'm due to start with is this top left one. So if you start with the same one as me, so whether it's the top left one, or even if you start with the bottom right one, because that's the same as each other, then you want to set up all the beads in the same way that I've done here. But if you start with the top right one, or the bottom left one, because they're also the same as each other, then you want to set up the beads in a mirrored image to this. So what that means is, imagine you have a mirror in front of your disc, then you need to use that mirror image to set it up in. So what that means is the top two here would swap with each other. Obviously not the cords, it's just the positioning of the beads. And the same with the bottom two there. And then on the sides, they would swap over the middle, so that means the top two, the one on each side, would swap with each other, and then also the bottom ones would swap with each other over the middle. And that's just to achieve that mirrored image of the setup of the actual beads. And that way you can achieve the same effect in the braid as me, but if you work in the opposite way. But then let's start bringing all the beads here into the braid. So then I picked up my disc here, because then what we're going to do is continue the exact same braid structure, but now every time we move a cord, we're going to add in a bead. So I'm just going to continue, like I said, the top left one is the one I'm due to take next. Then what I'm going to do is, once I release my cord here, I also grab the very first bead and release that to drop down the cord right down there into the middle. And then as I'm bringing the cord over, I just need to make sure that that bead stays in the middle there, but underneath the cords that are going out to the side. So if it doesn't fall in by itself, just make sure to tuck it in with your fingers. And then bring the cord down. And then to the bottom right one, do the same thing. As I'm releasing the cord, I'm releasing and dropping down my first bead. So it goes right there into the middle, and just tuck it under that cord going out to the side as well. And then we need to turn the disc to the next pair. So turn it a quarter, and then again we take the top left one, drop down the first bead as I'm releasing the cord into the middle there. Make sure it goes underneath, and just tuck it in with your fingers if you need to, and then continue like this. So then just to show you how you add in the SuperDuos as well. Now it's pretty much just the exact same. It's just obviously a slightly different shaped bead. So again, just letting it drop down into the middle. And now what you'll find is we have just cord going through one hole, and the other hole is obviously not used yet. That's going to be used later on to capture the cabochon and add the embellishment. But what you'll just find, and it'll probably happen naturally, is that the bead is going to sit like this. So the hole that's got the cord going through is kind of on the inside of the braid, but then the open hole that hasn't been used is facing away from the braid. And that's exactly what we want. Now, like I said, it'll most likely naturally be doing that, but just keep an eye on it throughout, just to make sure, because obviously we want all of the SuperDuos to sit like that. But otherwise, just continue like this, adding all the beads until you used them all. So then when I've used up all the beads here, I don't have any more left, then what we need to do is finish off this end basically the same way that we started out. So we need to make a little braid with just the cord. So all we're going to do is continue the braid structure, but just without adding in any beads. So I'm taking my top left one, the one that I was due to take next, and then just bring that down, and then the bottom one there, and bring that up, so you can see the exact same structure. And then the cords here and the end of the braid will naturally start to singe in. And then what we need is about the same length right as the beginning. Once I've then made the end, what I'm going to do is secure the end as well, so we can take it off the disc without worrying about it coming undone. So I'm just going to go to the pair that I was due to take next. That's opposite each other here. So I used these ones last, so I'm going to go to the ones that I'm due to take next, like I said. And then what we need to do is release cords that are diagonally opposite each other. So these two, then I'm bringing them across the middle and just tying a regular knot with them. then tightening that right down on the end of the braid, then leaving them out, and then doing the next two from the same pair, just retightening that, and then tighten a knot with them as well, just down right on top of the previous one. Like that, and then just leave them. And then we're just going to move to the other pair and do the exact same thing. So we're basically just tying a knot with all the cords right on the end here. And it's also to try and avoid adding too much bulk to the end, because if we just take it off and then tie a knot with the cords together, then that adds more bulk, so I kind of prefer doing it this way. And then the final one, just tie a knot here. And because this is the final cords that I'm using, what I like to do is, instead of just doing the one knot, I like to just do an extra one, just to make sure it gets held in place. Because if you just tie one, it's more likely to come undone as we keep working with it. Then we can take the disc away, and here we then have our braid. So we have a short little braid here that looks like this. You can see we have the 8/0 as the main part of the braid, but then we have these SuperDuos kind of sticking out from there, and they're forming these rows, and there's 3 of them going all the way around. So 2 of the rows we're going to use to capture the cabochon on either side, the front and the back, and then the last one, the 3rd row there, is going to be used to add the embellishment. So what we just got to make sure to do now is finish off the ends. So on here I can just remove my wire, and then that's ready. On this end here, what we need to do is just add a bit of glue right around where the cords are coming out, and then we can cut off the excess, because then what we need to do is take this on to the next step. So now the braid is completely ready here. What I just want to mention as well is what you'll be able to see if you look at one of the ends. It's the same on both, so it doesn't matter which one you start from. You'll be able to see that these rows of SuperDuos, they start just slightly off from each other. So we have one that starts just a little bit lower than one kind of in the middle there, and then the last one is just a little bit higher. So what I want to make sure to do is that that one that's in the middle, and then following that all the way along, is the one that I want to sit on the front of the cabochon. That's purely just to make it look as symmetrical as possible, because then it's going to sit quite evenly across from each other. And then I've got my thread ready here. So what I have is about an arm span or so. It's just what you're comfortable working with, really. It doesn't need to be super long because it's just an earring that we're making, but we do need to be able to go around multiple times. So we do need a decent length as well. And then what I've just done is on one end, I've tied a knot just so it's a stopper. And then on the other end, I've just put my needle on, and I just put a decent tail through that, because then we can always release the tail as we go when we need more thread. So I'll then take my thread and needle, and we first of all just need to attach it to our braid. So I'm going to start on one end, and we just start where we only have the braid with the cord, so before we start adding the beads in there. And I'm just going to go straight through and pull it all the way right till that knot that we put in, so that's a stopper. And then I'm just going to go back and forth through the braid here a few times. So just like this, just to help secure it a bit more. So do this a few times. So when I've gone through enough times there, what I'm then doing is going through again, but then making my way down towards where the beads start. So making sure I'm coming towards that middle one, like I said. That's the first one we need to get to. Then I'm just coming out right before the first bead that I run into, and pull it all the way through, because then we need to start working our way towards the first SuperDuo actually, so down where the beads are. And then I'm just going to go through that bead, and then we're actually in the beaded part of the braid now. But then to get to that very first SuperDuo, what I'm going to do is still go back and forth through the braid. So on the other side here of that bead, I'm just going to go straight through the braid, not any of the beads, just the braid there, out to the other side, and then pull it all the way through. And then make sure when you then pull this thread and you're going through the braid like this, you just pull it a little bit extra to get it all the way through, just to make sure that the thread nestles in between the beads there, so you don't have any loose thread sticking out. And then move down a little bit again, go through it, because like I said, we're working our way down towards that first SuperDuo, but obviously I'm wanting to make sure that the thread here blends in, so it's not going to be visible really. And then move down again. Just need to move that a little bit more to that side there. because then what we need to do is actually come out in front of that SuperDuo, but we need to come out on the opposite side, so not on the upper side here, but basically below it if we're looking at it like this. So we need to come out right below that SuperDuo there. So that's what I'm going to aim to do now. So go through the braid again. So just move a little bit, come through it, and then I come out right in front of that SuperDuo. Again, pull the thread all the way through. And then just make sure we pull it a bit tight, just so you can almost feel a little click sometimes when you do that. So make sure that that thread goes into the braid. So then we're at this SuperDuo here. What I'm then going to do is take my needle through the hole in the SuperDuo, but the hole that's already in the braid, so not the outer one that hasn't been used yet. Go through the one that has cord through it, just like that. And then we need to now come through the other hole in the opposite direction, because that's then how we've made our way to that outer hole as seamlessly as possible, really. So there you go. So we're going to have a little bit of thread lying across the side of the SuperDuo there, but because it's black thread and I'm using black SuperDuos, you won't be able to really see it at all. And even so, if you're using a different color compared to the SuperDuos, it's not going to be too visible. So now we're at this point here where I'm coming out of that SuperDuo, and we now basically need to start filling in this row with seed beads. So we first of all need to get our seed beads ready. So I'm getting my 15-0 seed beads out and just pouring a few out ready there. And then we take the braid again and the needle, and what we're going to do is basically bridge those gaps between the SuperDuos. So I'm going from that very first one, and then we need to go to the other one, the next one, always in the outer hole from now on. But obviously we don't want thread showing, so we need to get the right amount of beads, but also taking into account how it's going to lay compared to the cabochon, so shape around the cabochon. So here what we need to add in the first gap is 4 of the seed beads, and then just going to jump straight to the next SuperDuo, like that. And it's going to look a little loose, but what's going to happen, obviously, this is going to get shaped around the cabochon, so we do need it to get a curve into it, which is going to then happen with the seed beads that we're adding now. But don't worry about that at the moment. We're going to make sure that that happens later on. So the next one here, just change the way I'm holding it, is also 4 seed beads. And basically what we're going to be doing is working our way towards the middle of the braid first of all. Just getting a little bit tangled, and then another 4 seed beads, jump to the next one, and then again the next gap also needs 4. Just get that 4th one, jump to the next one. Then what you'll actually be able to see, if I just kind of pull it tight a little bit, you can see by adding these seed beads, it's actually going to then create a curve when you tighten it up, and that's exactly what we want. But for now, don't worry about pulling it tight, just get these beads added in. So that's now 4, and we're working our way towards the middle, so we can see when we reach the middle, that's that SuperDuo right down there. So we have 2 gaps left until we are at the middle SuperDuo. So that means the next one also needs 4. Jump to the next SuperDuo. And the next one we're going to jump to is the middle SuperDuo. So the gap just before that middle one now needs 3. So we're just having 1 less seed bead. And then we're jumping to that middle one. So there we go. And you can really start to see that. So I'm pulling that tight. You can get that effect, how it's going to fit around the cabochon. But then we need to move up the other side here, and basically this is going to be the exact same as we've just done, but just mirrored. So now because I'm on the other side of this SuperDuo, we finished with 3, and now we need to start with 3. So I'm just going to do 3, jump to the next one, all the way through, and then we need to do 4 basically in the rest of them. So do 4 seed beads between the gaps now, or between the SuperDuos in the gaps rather, until we've reached that top one. So now I added in all the beads there in between the SuperDuos on this row, and then if I just pull that tight, you can see we'll get a really nice curve in there. And then it's going to start bringing those ends of the braids together to get the shape that we want. But again, I'm still not just going to worry about pulling it too tight for now and holding it there, because what we need to do is just add some more beads to bring the two ends together. So first of all, that means we need to add 3 of our seed beads, and then we need to bring in 1 SuperDuo. So just add that after the 3 seed beads. So you have 3 seed beads, a SuperDuo, and then we need another 3 seed beads. So basically what this is going to replicate is the very middle of the braid, where we have the middle SuperDuo, but then we have 3 seed beads on either side. And then we're going to go over to the side here, go through the very first SuperDuo in the outer hole, and then what you want to do now is go through all of these beads again. So just grab as many as you can, go through the SuperDuos and all the seed beads in between, working your way all the way around back to that very beginning SuperDuo. So when I've gone all the way around there, making sure that I don't miss any of the seed beads, so we'll go through every single bead, and then I'm just going to go through that very first SuperDuo, but only the SuperDuo, not any of the little seed beads on the other side of it. And then we're going to get to the point where we need to pull this tight. So all you're going to do is keep hold of your piece and then start to pull this thread. So you bring the two ends together there. You can see it's going to close up nicely. And we're going to have this kind of more or less teardrop shape for now in place. And then this is going to be the one side that's going to capture the cabochon. So we added that extra SuperDuo in there to kind of be the same as the bottom one in the middle. So it looks like that. And then what we need to do is make sure this obviously stays in place so it doesn't loosen up as we keep working with it. So what I'm going to do is, in that SuperDuo that we just went through in the outer hole, we need to go down now to the bottom hole. So basically just how we started out, just in reverse. So I'm coming from the top hole there and then going through the bottom hole in the opposite direction. So actually I'm just going to put this through to the other side. That can be a bit easier sometimes to get through at the angle. And then you can get it through the bottom hole in the SuperDuo. Now it can be a little bit tight because obviously we have the cord in there. That's actually part of the braid, but you should be able to get it through. And also what can help is actually grabbing the needle here with a pair of pliers, just because you can get a better grip so it doesn't kind of slip through your fingers. And then just pull this all the way through almost, but before you've pulled it all the way, just making sure to avoid some tangles here. I just want to keep hold of a little loop in the thread. Just pull it through. It's got a little bit tangled again with that tail. So I have a little loop there, and then what I just want to make sure to do before I pull this length tight is I'm just pulling on the initial part of the loop that's going to tighten up this, just in case it got a little bit loose. So just get that out again, that little loop. So I'm pulling at that to make sure that I don't have any loose thread around there, and then I'm pulling at the tail here, the longer end, through that SuperDuo. And then that's basically that side in place. So all I'm going to do now is go down through the braid on this side of the SuperDuo, because I also wanted to secure this a little bit in place before we move on to the next step, just so it's not going to loosen up while we're then working on the next step there. So just go back and forth a few times, but working your way up towards the end, just before the last few beads there. So I then made sure that my thread is now coming out underneath the bead that I want to go through next. So that bead is basically one right on the end, but towards the inside, so that if you can imagine there, it's kind of the one sticking out right there. So that's going to end up meeting up with the one on the opposite end of the braid. So once they're fit together, you know it's that one that you need to come out underneath. And then I'm going to go through it from underneath it there. Because what we then actually need to do is connect those two ends on this side. So just pull the thread through, caught on those SuperDuos, and then we need to connect them by simply going to the one on the opposite side I said there, that's also kind of sticking out, down from the top, and then pull the thread through. Then you can see as I'm pulling it, it's going to pull them together, but we need to then go through the bead on the first side again, in the same direction as before, and basically go through these two beads in this direction here a few times. So as I'm pulling that, you can see it pulls them nice and close together, and that's how we want them to sit. But we, like I said, need to go through this a few times to make it more secure so they're going to stay in place. So you just follow that path a few times around. What I then like to do is, once I've gone through it a few times there, I just go out on whichever side you've ended up on and actually take my needle through the braid again, just to then help secure that little area in place. I like to kind of do that in between steps. It makes it easier to continue without the previous thing coming undone, but also it just helps secure the overall piece more. Make sure to pull it tight by holding onto them beads, and that they're pushed nicely together so we don't have too much thread showing there that's loose. And then go back and forth here a few times, just like before, to secure it. And then what we're going to do is work our way up towards, like I said, whichever side you've landed up towards the bead that we've just gone through a few times, because then what we need to do is secure that and also incorporate that still loose SuperDuo. So now I'm coming out of either one of those two beads that we connected from either end of the braid, and I'm coming towards the bottom there, so from above, going through the bead and then coming out below, so basically towards that SuperDuo. So then what we need to do is add in a few more beads, but these are the 8/0s that we actually added into the braid. So I'm just adding these to kind of make it blend in, but then also to be able to connect that loose side of that SuperDuo. So I'm just taking one, and then I'm coming from that bead. This is then on the left side of the SuperDuo, looking from this angle. So I'm going to go through the SuperDuo from that side, in that hole that hasn't been used yet. Pull it all the way through, and that's going to sit there and then catch that SuperDuo nicely. Then take the other one, and then go through the other bead in the braid that we used to connect. And just come up from below. Make sure I avoid going through anything else. I think I just maybe went through some cord, so I'm just bringing it through there and pull the thread all the way out. So that then pulls the bead onto the other side of the SuperDuo, and it kind of just slots in perfectly like that. So you can see it completely blends in with the braid really, because obviously it's the same beads that we're using as well. And that's how you really connect the SuperDuo, the other half of the SuperDuo here, to the rest of it so we don't have it flopping around. So what you're going to do now is basically just reinforce this a bit, just like we reinforced this whole area, at least going through it the 2 times, just to make it stronger long term. We want to do that the same here as well. So you can go through the same path to make sure we at least get 2 threads through all areas, but you can even go through a few more times. So the same path, go out to the side, come back a different way, and then also try and connect these 2 beads here, the ones we just added in, to the next bead in the braid. So for instance, if I just go through again on the other side, just to show you as I'm reinforcing it, make sure my thread doesn't get caught on the ends of the braid, and then pull that nicely still so we don't have loose thread showing up anywhere. Go through the SuperDuo, and now we've already gone through that twice, so it's already going to be stronger. And then I'm coming through that extra bead that we added in on that side. Then obviously you can still go all the way through in this round, follow the same path as before, but then once you feel like you've done it enough times, what you can do as well is swap and go through and just have a look. We're going through that bead normally, so what we can do is actually go through the next bead over, but come down from the top. So it'd be coming down like that, which would then also pull the beads into a nice position, just in the perfect angle. And obviously you can do the same thing on the other side. So just make sure to go through this a few times. Also then, especially when you're done, go through the braid on either side that you finish up on. So this is then what it looks like once I've fully attached them together there, and also gone through several times more, like I said. So I have my thread ending up on one side, and then just to show you here, I'm adding in the cabochon. And like I said, this is going to be the front side. So add that in, you can see it's going to sit really nicely. And these beads with the SuperDuos just capture it just perfectly, so it's not going to fall out. But we're not due to capture it just yet, because what we need to do is, where my thread is coming out, I'm going to flip my piece around, and then we need to move to this side here, because we have this row of SuperDuos on the opposite side that's going to capture the back of the cabochon. So basically, we need to get our thread to the same point as before, but just on this side. So to the very first SuperDuo, in front of it, or below it, and then go through to the top hole, and then we just basically have to add in all the same beads on this side here, also that gap on the top with that extra SuperDuo in, add the same amount between each one, go through all of them again, and then before we pull it tight is where we then need to add in the cabochon. So just do all that, repeat what I showed you on this side, because it's the exact same there, and then I'm going to show you how to fully capture the cabochon once we got to that point. So now I've gone all the way around, adding the beads on this side as well between the SuperDuos, and then make sure to go through it all one more time to reinforce it, but I've not pulled it fully tight yet, because then we need to take the cabochon, and the side that we did first was the front, so this side we're working on now is the back. So I'm going to make sure to place the cabochon in like that. So place it into the hole here, the middle of the braid, and then basically to secure it in place, all we need to do now is pull this thread tight. So I like to kind of hold on the beads a little bit, right around that first SuperDuo where the thread is coming out from, and then start pulling on the thread. Now you want to pull a bit tight, obviously don't pull forcefully because you don't want to break the thread, but you can pull it a bit tight there, because what we need to do is make sure that all the beads around here are going to be nice and tight next to each other, so we don't really want to see any loose thread in between the SuperDuos there. So keep pulling that, and what can also help is pushing down on the SuperDuos a bit to come in over the cabochon. So it's going to basically be like the front. So just keep working with that. And then we pulled it a bit tight here, kind of holding on to it, and you can already see that I'm shaking this and it's not coming out in any way. So keep pulling until you're happy. And then what we need to do is secure this basically just in the same way that we finished off the front there on the top. So I'm coming through that first SuperDuo in the outer hole, and then all we need to do is make sure we pull this tight, go through the bottom hole that's in the braid in the opposite direction there, to then be able to come out towards the braid again. So you just do that and making sure that this stays tight. So again, like I said before, leave that little loop so you can just pull this before you then pull on the long end. So that's then going to be the cabochon captured in place. And then once you've done that and you have the cabochon securely in there, then what we need to do is just fix this little area up here. So secure this backside of the two ends of the braids in place as well. And obviously remember to incorporate that loose SuperDuo still, the outer hole. So you just do the exact same thing that I showed you on the front, just connecting those two outer beads, or inner beads rather on the end of the braid, using a couple more ADOs then to attach the SuperDuos. And then once you've done that, what we need to do is get to one of the sides here, because then all that's left to do is adding the embellishment on the edge. So now I completely finished the back there, and it's captured nicely in place, and this cabochon isn't going to come out in any way. So what we now need to do, like I said, we need to do the outer edge. So what I've done is I worked my needle towards one of the sides, and then we need to come out in front of a certain bead. So if we just take that very first SuperDuo into account, then what we need to do is come out in front of the bead opposite it. So we're going to have two beads sat next to each other. Between the SuperDuo and that bead we need to come up in front of. So just flip it around. It means we're coming out, in this case how we're looking at it, below. So we're going to be able to go through that bead there from this angle and basically towards that SuperDuo. Just coming through just like that. And then just bring it all the way through, because this is where we're going to start adding our beads in to get to that very first SuperDuo. So again, I'm going to get in my little tiny seed beads, and then also now we need to bring in our sparkles here, so the bicones. And first of all, we need to get from that seed bead in the braid to the SuperDuo, but obviously without really having any thread showing. So I'm going to add 3 of my seed beads, little tiny ones, go through the outer hole in that first SuperDuo on this side. And you can see that just kind of makes it blend in just perfectly, again because I'm using obviously the same colour, so you can't see any thread. And then we need to start with the pattern on the edge. So first of all, we need to add 1 seed bead, 1 bicone, and then 2 seed beads. Go through the next SuperDuo, so jump from the first one to the second one, and that's going to slot in there just perfectly. And then to jump from the second one here to the third one, we need to again add 1 seed bead, 1 bicone, and then 2 seed beads, and jump to the next one, so like that there. And then for the third gap we need to do the same, so that means 1 seed bead, 1 bicone, and 2 seed beads. Jump to the next one, get untangled, and then that fits in perfectly there. But now what we need to do is, because the spacing between the SuperDuos now is kind of increasing because of the angle of this braid, how it's been curved around, we need to actually change the amount. So in this one here, I now need to add 2 seed beads, 1 bicone, and 2 seed beads. So we are kind of attempting to have the bicone there in the middle, but we're just having to kind of change up how many seed beads we do on either side depending on the spacing between the SuperDuos there. Jump to the next one. And then for the next one, so you can see again we're moving our way towards the middle. This next one here is going to have the same, so that means 2 seed beads, 1 bicone, and then 2 seed beads again. Jump to the next one, and this is then where the next one that we're going to go through of the SuperDuos is going to be the middle one. So that means this is kind of the widest gap. So what we're going to add is 2 seed beads, 1 bicone, and then 3 seed beads after it. And then go through the middle SuperDuo. Just like that, and then we can just pull it tight so it's going to slot in perfectly there. So you can see it all fits nicely, and we don't have any loose thread showing anywhere. So what we're going to do now is, from this midpoint, we're just basically going to repeat on this side, just like I did on the inside here. It's a mirrored image. That means we now need to start with 3, because we just finished with 3, and then do the bicone, and then do 2. So that's the same as this one, just mirrored. And then working our way up the other half. So you just want to now repeat this side as we did here, but like I said, just in reverse. So the same amounts until we get to that very top one up there. And then once you get to that, go through the very last SuperDuo there. We need to finish in the same way as well. So come out through that last SuperDuo and then add 3 seed beads to then go through the seed bead in the braid that's straight across from it, that just has those 2 beads in between them. And then once you go through there, all we've got to do is really get a thread towards one of the ends here so we can finish it off. So now I made it all the way to one of the ends here with my thread and needle, and then to finish it off, what I've done first of all is I've made sure to go through this a few times, that very end, just like we started out basically. And then I just want to tie off a few knots before I then cut off the excess of the thread. So I'm coming out in one place, and I'm going to go through again, somewhat close. Just bring the needle through, and then I'm going to pull it through, but not all the way. what I'm going to do is make sure I leave a little loop here that I can then take my needle back through. So I'm going to go through this twice, and then I can pull it tight, and that then creates a little knot as I'm going through the braid here. And then obviously you want to go through again to get away from that knot, the opposite side, and you want to tie a few knots like this. And then once you've done that, after the last knot, make sure you just go back and forth a few more times so you don't end up cutting off this thread right by your last knot, because then that'll just come undone. So do that, cut off the excess, and then all that's left to do is finish off this end. So then to finish off the ends there, what I'm going to use is one of these bell-shaped Kumihimo ends, because it's really just the same as finishing off a beaded Kumihimo bracelet. So all you're going to do is add glue to the inside of the Kumihimo end, and then add that onto the very ends of the braid. It's going to fit just perfectly over there. And also just make sure that you place it properly so that loop sits how you need to add it to your findings, to the earring findings there. So I already have a tutorial where I show how to use these Kumihimo ends. If you need to have a look at that, I'll put a link to it down in the description box below, but otherwise just add that. Obviously you need to make your second earring as well and get it to this point, add your earring findings, and once you've done both of them like this, then you have your finished pair. So now that I've finished the other one as well, I then have my full pair of earrings here, and they look like this. So you can see we have the cabochon in the middle, you can see it from both sides, but obviously one is the back and one is the front. And then you have the Kumihimo braid that captures it using those SuperDuos, and then the embellishment along the edge. So I just chose to add those bicones in. It gives a really nice sparkle to them. And obviously they have an AB coating, so it gives a bit of colour as well. But you could also add other things, so that's completely up to you. This is just what I chose. So that's how you make them. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial here, and thank you very much for watching.